Everyone, thanks so much for joining us today for a virtual conversation about climate change and environmental policy with Congressman Fitzpatrick. My name is Emily Wurzba, and I'm a manager of government relations at the Environmental Defense Fund. So on behalf of EDF and EDF Action, I'm very excited to be having this conversation with such a strong advocate for bipartisan environmental policy in Congress. We're so grateful for your time, Congressman, and I'm really looking forward to a great discussion with some constituents from Pennsylvania's 1st Congressional District. And before we begin, I just want to note that this event is nonpartisan and is not campaign related in any way. But first, I'm going to turn things over to Alicia at the Friends Committee on National Legislation for some brief opening remarks as well. So go ahead, Alicia.
Thanks, Emily. So hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Cannon, and I'm the Program Assistant for Sustainable Energy and Environment at the Friends Committee on National Legislation. I'm joined by my colleague, Ashley Wilson, who heads our Grasstop program at FCNL. And we are so excited to have this opportunity to talk to Representative Fitzpatrick, who is committed to bipartisanship and environmental stewardship and brings a faith perspective to his work on Capitol Hill. So thank you all for being here, and thank you, Representative Fitzpatrick, for your time. I am just looking forward to this fruitful discussion with our advocates.
So we're very thankful to you for introducing the Market Choice Act. Placing a price on carbon emissions seems like a very important step in working on future climate policy. Our question is, though, you spoke about keeping partisanship out of climate issues. How will you get your colleagues to move this act forward?
With this issue, there were business interests at stake, there were environmental interests at stake, and there were labor interests at stake. One of the things that I've always tried to do with every piece of legislation, and it's hard, it really is, but to bring all stakeholders to the table to actually put something together that's meaningful, that has legs, and that can advance. And what we were able to do with the Market Choice Act, first, we were able to get labor to buy into it, the environmental community to buy into it, and business to buy into it. That's a huge and almost impossible coalition to put together. We put it together with this bill. The next challenge was I'd like to make all my bills bipartisan upon introduction. This one I wanted to make equally bipartisan. And we did that. We introduced it with 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and with the American public overwhelmingly seeking fixes to our crumbling roads and our bridges. And that's what this Market Choice Act did. It combined infrastructure and the environment. And you know, if we're doing this while we're searching for solutions to mitigate the dangerous effects of climate change, our bipartisan bill is, I believe, to be a very dynamic solution that seeks to tackle both problems at once. And this is a perfect example of a way we can protect our environment, rebuild our crumbling infrastructure. The big debate is how to finance it. So we came up with this proposal to say, we can take care of 2 issues at once. We can price carbon, limit carbon emissions, benefit the environment, and use the revenue from that to rebuild our nation's infrastructure, which will be a job creator and an economic driver as well. And we were able to get all 3, sometimes disparate interest groups on board with this, which was a lot of work, believe me. And my goal for the Market Choice Act is to continue to gain co-sponsors from both sides of the aisle. We always try to ideally keep it as a Noah's Ark rule, that if you want to join, you find someone from the opposite party to join with you. It keeps it competitive, it keeps it balanced, and I believe it gives it a lot more credibility.
As far as the question for today's meeting, COVID-19 has been a public health and economic disaster. As we seek to rebuild our economy, what opportunities do you see for advancing clean energy in a future stimulus package?
It's a great question, Trevor. I think the best thing we can do to advance clean energy this year is to extend the energy investment tax credit in order to promote clean energy investment. I was an original co-sponsor of the what's called the Renewable Energy Extension Act. Under current law, 2019 was the last year that both residential and commercial renewable energy projects can take advantage of the ITC's full 30% value before it steps down to, I believe it's 10% in 2022 for commercial and utility projects, as well as residential systems that are owned by companies. So without the ITC's extension, the credit drops to 0 for residential installations owned by homeowners in 2022. The Renewable Energy Extension Act would provide a 5-year extension of the current law. I believe it's Section 48, Business Energy Investment Tax Credit, and 25D, the tax credit for residential energy efficient property status. This includes technologies related to solar, technologies related to fuel cells, technology related to geothermal, and microturbines as well. So I think that's probably the most important thing we can do in the short term for it.
As a member of the House Committee on Foreign Affairs, can you describe the ways the United States can address climate change on a global stage?
Every nation will be affected by climate change, which is why nearly every country agreed to work to reduce carbon emissions. I continue to urge the administration not to leave the Paris Climate Accord. There are still things that can be done. And I introduced the Still In resolution last year with Representative Jared Huffman. And it's garnered 71 co-sponsors. And it's meant to show that Congress cares about staying in this accord. Climate change threatens the state of both our nation and the world and requires international cooperation for sure. That's one of the reasons why an environmental subcommittee has been added to our Foreign Affairs Committee. And I think that was a really good decision that was made in this Congress. In response to this global challenge, I think the United States should and must play an indispensable role in providing global leadership and clarity needed by making a firm promise to sustain the historic Paris Agreement. It was H.R. 9, I believe, was the bill number, the Climate Action Now Act, which would require, again, I co-sponsored and voted for that, which would require the president to develop and update annually a plan for the United States to meet its nationally determined contribution under the Paris Climate Accord Agreement. And by the way, the Market Choice Act that we talked about earlier does set a carbon price that would exceed, if complied with, would exceed the Paris Climate Accord standards.